Welcome everyone, my name is Jeff Crowell. I'm one of the professors for Computer Science 1631 this fall term. In this video I'm going to go through a Scratch program to implement the housing algorithm for one of the readings you had. And the idea is I want to give you a feel for working with conditionals and variables in a Scratch program. You'll be taking this program and adding more features to it in your Thursday or Friday class, so this gives you an opportunity to see how I might do it before you make those changes yourself. So let's take a look at what the program does right now if we click the green flag. So it asks us, what is your current year of study? Let's say we're in year 3. It asks us, are we over 23, yes or no? I'll say yes. And it gives us a housing score of 4. So it gives us 3 points for being in 3rd year and 1 point for being older than 22, total housing score of 4. Great. One thing this program doesn't do, though, currently, is ask us about academic probation. Again, if you look at the algorithm of the reading, it says that if we're on academic probation, we're going to lose some points. Depending on whether we're in 3rd or 4th year, we'll lose 3 points. If we're in 1st or 2nd year, we'll lose 2 points. So we don't have that in the program currently. It doesn't ask us that, and so we want to add that functionality to the program and correctly compute the score based on the user's answer. So let's take a quick look at what the program does currently in terms of the code. So when the green flag is clicked, it sets our housing score to 0. We're not getting any points to begin with. Asks us what is our current year of study. It's then going to set this variable, as it talks about in one of the readings. You can set variables to things the user answers, so you set the year of study to answer. And then we have a bunch of conditional statements here. If the year of study is 1, we change the housing score by 1, increase it. If the year of study is 2, change the housing score by 2. Otherwise, so if it wasn't 1, it went to this. If it wasn't 2, it went to this next block. If your study was 3, we change it by 3. And then else, if none of those previous things were true, then we'll change the housing score by 4. So one of these statements will happen. Finally, it asks us, are we over 23? And again, sets that to a different variable, this variable called older than 22. If that's yes, then we change the housing score by 1. Otherwise, we don't. We change the housing score by 0. So that's great. Let's add the probation thing. So first of all, we're going to ask the user, we're going to ask them right here after the other questions have happened, are you on academic probation? And wait, so the sprite over here will ask that question. And again, just like in these other cases, we want to take that answer and set it to a variable. So we got it into variables here on the side, and we have to make a new one. We have a variable for housing score, we have a variable for they're older than 22, we have a variable for their year of study. We need to make a new variable. And we'll call it something sort of pertinent to the situation, on probation. Okay. Now we can go to variables. We can set this variable to, go back into sensing, if we find answer here, to the answer. So just like over here, we ask the question and wait, whatever they answered goes into this circle answer, and we're going to set housing score to that value. Oh, so actually we need to set it to a different variable. We want to set it on probation. So if the user entered yes, on probation it would be yes. If the user entered no, on probation it would be no. Okay, so that's set that variable. Now we actually need to do something with it, change the housing score based on what they said. So we're going to have an if statement following this. I'm just going to move this block around so you can get this in correctly. Sometimes you have to sort of move around the blocks in Scratch to get everything set up correctly. And if something, we're going to do something else. So if they answered yes, so we're going to go to operators equals. So if on probation equals yes, then we want to do something. And what do we do? Now we need another if statement, because remember, it's if they're 3rd or 4th year, they lose 3 points. If they're 1st or 2nd year, they lose 2 points. So we'll have an if-else statement here. So we're going to do one thing depending on whether 3rd or 4th year, a different thing depending on whether they're 1st and 2nd year. So in here, we need, this is where something like an or comes in really useful, because we want to say if they're 3rd or 4th year, do something. So if something equals or something equals, so if their year of study equals, let's move this back so you can see it, if year of study equals 3 or year of study equals 4, do something. So now we've got this nice big block here. If year of study equals 3 or year of study equals 4, do something, and we want to change their housing score by -3. They're losing points for being on academic probation, and they're going to lose 3 points if their year of study is 3 or 4. Great. what happens otherwise. So this else is with this if, and if their year study wasn't 3 or 4, their year study is 1 or 2, so we're going to change the housing score in that case by -2. So just recapping what we've added, we added the question here, we set this variable to what the user answered. If they're on probation, and then if their year study is 3 or 4, we change to -3. Otherwise, they're on probation, but we are 1 or 2, so we change by -2. Let's just run the program and see what it's doing. So you say this before, was your current year study? Say 3. Are you over 23? We'll say yes. It's updating, which is very nice, updating our housing score as we go. The housing score is now 4. Are we on academic probation? We'll say yes. And since we're in year 3 or 4, it should lower our score by 3. Great. It set the on probation to yes, it lowered our housing score down to 1, and the sprite tells us what our housing score was. We could run this again with some different variables, see if it's still working then. Let's say we're in year 1, and we'll say we're not over 23, and let's say we're not in academic probation. Just gives us a housing score of 1 again as well, because our year start is 1 for 1 point. We didn't get the point for being older than 22, and we weren't on academic probation, so nothing changes. Let me do one more test. So your study is 2. We'll say no. And are you on academic probation? Let's say yes. Your housing score is 0. We started with 2, and we lost 2 points for being on academic probation. Great, so that's one way we could add this functionality to this program. Let me just give you one other way to set this up as well, because often when you have conditional statements, there's different ways to set up what you might want to do. So this is one way, and this is what we'll start with on the program on Thursday or Friday, but I'm going to set this up in a different way. So I'm going to move this block down here just to save it, and rather than have a sort of nested if like this, if on probation equals yes, and if your study equals 3 or your study equals 4, we're going to have use an AND statement as well. This is a different way you could set up this same program. So set up if, we're going to copy this block. So this is a useful feature you can do in Scratch. If you have a particular block you want to use again, you just right click and hit duplicate, and you can use that block. And we're going to do an AND here. So if on probation equals yes, and year of study equals 3 or 4. So you have to expand this out. Don't need to go quite that big. Alright, let's take a look at this block of setup. So this says if you're on probation and your year of study is 3 or 4. And that's the case when we want to reduce their score by 3. So we'll do that block there. That's kind of nice. It's putting those two statements into a single statement rather than having an if, then inside that having another if for using the AND clause. Let's copy this whole block. And again, sort of move things around to get things in the correct place. And then we'll change this to be 1 or 2. Change housing score by -2. Oops. So this is a different way to set up these conditional statements. Here I'm saying if on probation and your year 3 or 4, change by -3. If you're on probation and your year of study is 1 or 2, change housing score by -2. It should be the same as this kind of setup here. It's just a different way of doing that same thing. Maybe test it out with the case. Let's say we're in year 4. We'll say we're not over 23. We'll say yes, we're on academic probation. Same thing as before. Our housing score goes down to 1. It was 4 for being in year 4, but then we lose 3 points. Let's try, we're in second year, we're not over 23, and yes, we're on academic probation. Great, our housing score is 0. We got 2 points for being in year 2, and then we lost 2 points for being on academic probation. So just wanted to show you a few different ways to set up the same idea, and that happens all the time through programming. There's many different ways to implement the same algorithm in whatever computer language you use, and Scratch is no exception. Great, that's the end of this video, and hope to see you in class Thursday or Friday.